Hello and welcome to the Romance Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z and Morgan Brice, and tonight we will be talking about shifter romance. But before we dive into that, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Gail.
Hi, Gail. Hi, everyone. I'm Gail Maxwell. I write contemporary and mostly paranormal romance. I like to write likable characters that you really want to have a happy ending, even some of them that maybe aren't as likable at the beginning. I just have one shifter series, I think, but I'm kind of interested in writing more. So after the first one, I liked it.
Okay, Rosary.
Hello, I'm Rosary Deville. I'm also Melissa E. Costa, and I've written a fair share of shifter books. I've written 2 novels and I think a few short stories. My latest series, Feral Hearts, is on werewolves. And, you know, I never thought I would get into the shifter thing. It wasn't that I didn't like it. I just had been writing wrote contemporary and sci-fi. But then I always liked fantasy. So, you know, shifter was like, this is my thing. And then once I started writing it, I'm like, this is really fun. So I want to keep writing. I write under 2 pen names. Rosary Deville is my more risque stuff. And my series, The Offering, which was a erotica, very taboo. Book 1 actually ended up getting banned from Amazon. So that was fun. Yeah, that was fun. Of course, it's going to make me write my spinoff even smuttier. Just for that, you know, just for that.
All right.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Layla.
Hi. Well, I write a little bit of everything, rocker boys, biker boys, but I grew up reading a lot of shifters and role-playing a lot of shifters. I played a lot of Vampire the Masquerade and the Werewolf and all of that. Fell in love with shifters. My roommate and I wrote shifters. So my first shifter book was actually Snake Shapeshifters. And then I did a ferret shifter story for an anthology. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to be all in on the shifters. I am currently writing book 6 of my Comet Lake Wolf shifter series, but I'm also working on a lion shifter series. And my wolves are all MMM. And my lions are actually a harem, a true lion harem of 5.
Very nice. Maz.
Hello, I'm Maz. I write LGBTQ paranormal shifter romances. I love doing shifters that are a little bit more crazy. Like my favorite and I guess most notable series is my Dinosaur Shifters, which I tried to make a background, but I think they're backwards. That's my MO, trying something and being like, cool, did it wrong. Anyway. Yeah, I love crazy action adventure style romances, lots of, you know, heists and beating up bad guys and hot boys kissing. That's my thing.
That works. Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel, and Maz, your background is showing up the right way for me. So
oh, good.
I can read the titles.
Backwards. Okay, good. Yeah. Great, it worked.
I write with Ari McKay under the Rachel Langella brand. We have mostly our contemporary paranormal books, and we have 2 shifter series. We have this one, the Asheville Arcana, and we have an older one called Bloodbathery. And the Bloodbathery was pretty standard vampire and shifter things, but with Asheville Arcana, we've sort of expanded and gone beyond just wolf shifters, and we have all kinds of different paranormal beings in there.
Okay, Kiki.
I'm Kiki Burrelli, and I write gay paranormal romance. And my first book was a wolf shifter book, and I just never changed. I just have been writing shifters since then, mostly wolves. I do a lot of wolves, but I've also done just a variety of different types of shifters. My Welcome to Morningwood series has everything from a draft shifter to a tarantula shifter to an impala shifter. So if it's shifter, I write it.
Okay. And Kiernan.
I'm Kiernan Kelly. I write mostly GLBT romance and across the genres, but I write lots and lots of shifters, and a lot like Maz, I write odd shifters. I've done Dinosaur Shifters, and I've done Fainting Goat Shifters, Gail, and I've done just about every shifter. I mean, I've been doing it for 20 years, so I've done just about every shifter I could think of. I love the weird ones. I really do. They hold a special place in my heart.
And I'm Gail Z Martin and Morgan Brice. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance, which of course includes the Fox Hollow series. That is about a town that's a haven for misfit shifters and psychics. And so I've got my wolves, and in the new book again, there is a lynx shifter. In the prior book, there was a fox shifter, but I've also had raccoons and possums and squirrels and fainting goats and studley boar goats and beavers and otters. So, you know, the sky's the limit. And I love getting outside, coloring outside the lines and seeing some of the ones that we don't see all that often. So what got you hooked originally on shifters? Bill?
So I have to be honest, shifters was something I did not want to write. I really don't know why. I love all things paranormal, but I never really got into the shifters. I've read very few shifter books, but my co-author had an idea for a paranormal series, and Nick Starr, she mainly writes contemporary. She had never written paranormal, so she was like, I don't know, you want to do this series with me? And she had this idea where they're shifters, but they're dying from a degenerative disease that causes them to, it like forces them to shift, but the more they shift, the more they decline. And so it's something that it's a genetic disease, you know, they can't predict who will get it, who won't. There's never been a cure. You have 4 packs that don't work together on anything, and yet they're all suffering from this. So I was fascinated by that aspect of it, that, you know, the thing that makes them a shifter is what's killing them. So that's what kind of hooked me into doing this series with her. And it's been a lot of fun. I think it drives her nuts because she's a total planner. So she had the whole series plotted out, you know, like this wonderful outline that you know, from chapter 1, I was like, well, but why does it have to be this way? So I kind of threw her on her ear, I think, with that. But we're just working on our 3rd book, and now it's kind of made me where I totally am getting other ideas for shifter books. So I feel like that was kind of my introduction to the world of shifters. It's been a lot of fun.
Okay, Rosary.
So believe it or not, I actually got interested in shifter fiction from fan fiction. I just to relieve stress, I'll read fan fiction and whatnot. And I got into this one author, and it was werewolves. And I had always said, you know what, I don't really care for werewolves. They're not sexy. And then I read this girl's stuff. I'm like, oh my God, this is really hot. Okay, so and then I started reading Feral Hearts. This was a way back when. I mean, Feral Hearts has been in my pipeline for a while. And then one night I wanted to make an even kinkier version. So I started writing the Offering series. And then once I opened that door on shifters, because I had always kind of liked cats. Cats are my thing. I liked cats. So once I'd opened the door, I'm like, you know what? Why don't I write more on like these kind of shifters that I like? So my first published novel, Cat Escort, was about house cat shifters. And then I just sort of kind of went into it that way. Like I said, I never thought like my first several books would be shifters, because that just wasn't something on my radar. But once I discovered how you know, the fated mates, I liked that one. And I liked, you know, a sort of special bond that could go on between the 2 characters. It was a lot of fun. And I don't know, once I got over that hang up I had, it was like, And then I got into MPreg, and I was like, oh my God, this is great. One of the things I never thought I would like either. Like, now I offering is all MPreg, and Feral Hearts will be there too. So it went that way, and I'm just going with it, riding the wave, I guess.
All right, Layla.
Really, I got into it when I first came up here to Iowa, where I live. My roommate and I didn't have even, like, we had no cable, we didn't have internet. We had 3 kids that were under 7 years old, and we used to game all the time, but of course we couldn't then. So we started writing together. We would actually sit on the couch with a notebook and pass it back and forth. And so we started having all these shifter characters, and they were like avian shifters and lions and big cats. And we had like just about every big cat you can think of, and bears and wolves. And so I finally I was like, man, I would love to do something like with this. And when I wrote my snake book, it was totally by accident. It was a writing prompt that was like, you come home and something unusual is on your couch. And my unusual were these half snake, half human, like they have features of snakes and humans in their one form. And only the purebred shifters for the snakes can go from snake to human. And so that was like my first one. And then once I did that one, I was like, oh, I want to do something else. I want to do something else. And the opportunity came to do that little ferret. And at that point I was hooked. I was like, okay, like I got to do the wolves. And I was sitting home last year and I started writing the first wolf shifter book. And it was like 2.5 weeks later, and book 1 was already like, I was just every day in front of the computer all day. And 3 months later, we were like on book 4 and, you know, working on book 5 and plotting out this 10-book series. And I was like, okay, I'm totally hooked. Like I can't see doing much else besides my bikers, my rockers, and my shifters at that point.
Okay. Yes.
So it's actually funny, Layla, that you say that it happened by accident, because that's basically what happened to me too. Like it was like before I started like really seriously writing, of course I was consuming like mountains of romance books. And I had read just basically anything that was recommended in the group. I was like, okay, cool, bought it. But I remember specifically when I picked up the first Charlie Cochet's 3rd series. It was funny as hell, and it had shifters, and I was like, this is it. Like if I was going to start writing, I'd want it to be funny, and I'm pretty sure it has to be shifters. And I was literally goofing around with a friend, and we were talking about, like, I don't remember how the conversation started, but we were talking about like, what if we did like centaurs, but they were cowboys, and it was like a total joke. And then like a plot bunny just took over, and I ran with it, and I wrote 7 books about it. Like it was the exact same thing where I was like, it like fell out of me basically, and was like, oh shit, I love doing like shifters. This is my thing. So it's funny how it works out that way, where it's like one little like spark in there, and then you like you said, 4 months later you're on like book 6 or whatever. So I'm right there with you.
How about you, Rachel?
Well, I have always been a horror fan, reading, watching. And I remember in my teens, I was absolutely traumatized by the movie American Werewolf in London. And I also like the old black and white Universal monster movies, like Frankenstein, The Mummy, Wolfman. So I've always been fascinated by werewolves as a supernatural creature. And then when I got older and started writing, I kind of got into fan fiction. Ari and I actually met in a particular fandom. It was not Laurel K. Hamilton. Nope. But we were writing for that fandom, and one of the characters was a werewolf. And we sort of made that transition and brought that along. Our first book that we wrote of original fiction was the first book of the Blood Bathory series. And I'm more of the paranormal person than she is. She likes the action adventure, and I like the paranormal and spooky stuff. So with these books, we blend our 2 strengths.
Okay. Kiki.
Oh, there I am. Well, I love shifter books. I read them before I wrote them. Both MF and MM. Some of my first ones were the Breed series by Laura Lay. Those are all MFs. And I just think that when you write shifters, it just sort of pings a lot of my personal preferences. I enjoyed this whole found family aspect. Writing really loyal characters, having like these huge aggro possessive type, leading males. I enjoy killing people in interesting ways and blowing things up, and shifters just lets me do all of that.
Cool. Kiernan?
I have always been attracted by the shifters' otherness. Like they're human, but they're more than human. There's something else besides human. And that just always intrigued me. It's like an anthropomorphic process that they go through. It just always really interests me. And I was always very attracted to that type of a character. And I've written several werewolf books. And then, like so many others, I said, there's got to be more than just werewolves. And I started branching out. And then I started doing the Midnight Rodeo series with B.A. Tortuga and Julia Talbot. And I got the freedom to do all kinds of really weird shifters. And then I did a series called In Their Own Skins, which is a 3-book series. And in it, I put every possible shifter I could imagine into these books. The first book has a T-Rex villain, which I absolutely loved, and he wound up having 2 velociraptor children. So that was the second book. But there are horse shifters and eagle shifters and moose shifters and bison shifters, and everything I could think of went into those books. I just hold them very dear to my heart. But that's why I think I started, was because of the otherness, something more than just human.
Okay. I definitely came to shifters the same way I came to MM romance, which was through fan fiction. I love reading fan fiction, especially supernatural fan fiction. And there was plenty of shifter supernatural fanfic. And so when I came up for air and said, hey, I wonder what the stuff that isn't fandom based looks like, I found my way to Charlie Cochet's 3rd series and then to Elsie Davis's Mountain Shifters. And I loved the humor in Charlie's books. I loved the drama in Elsie Davis's books. And that was part of the decision to create Morgan Brice and say, this is just too much fun. I've got to have part of this. I got to be in this. And I love the big predators, the wolves and the lynxes and the foxes. They're fun, the big cats. But I love the quirky little animals that have a lot of heart and are braver than they get credit for. And in some cases, like my possum shifter, are darn fine bakers. So, I just love bringing that humanity to them and figuring out who am I going to put together this time? Like a squirrel shifter who falls in love with a guy who has a squirrel phobia. How do you get past that? And it's just fun because it's you can take it in so many directions. Speaking of which, what makes your shifters maybe a little bit different? BL?
Well, it's this debilitating disease that they're all fighting. They're pretty traditional shifters. There's a lot of pack politics with them because there's 4 packs. It's called 4 Packs Trilogy, and all of them sort of have like their little, their whole society. They don't like to blend their societies. So through the series, a lot of it is them realizing they have to start working together because part of why they're dying is from not working together, not helping each other out. So, but mostly I think it's this disease that's slowly killing them. And I have to tell you, it's kind of funny that you mentioned American Werewolf in London, because when the first book starts with one of the shifters dying from this disease, And Nick was saying, you know, she's like, yeah, I want it where he's shifting and it's horrible because he's dying. I'm like, you have to watch American Werewolf in London because that is the best, worst transformation scene ever. And she really nailed it with showing, you know, he's in agony. He can't control himself shifting and it's killing him the whole time he's shifting. So that's kind of what put this apart from other shifter books.
Okay, Rosary.
Okay, so since I am both Rosary and Melissa here, I will talk about two different shifters, not all of mine for Melissa and, you know, just for Rosary. So I'll start out with Melissa's Feral Hearts. So now, to blanket disclaimer here, I haven't read a lot of other shifter books. So I'm not, when you say what makes yours different, I don't know in that regard because I don't have a lot of comparison. But in my mind, what I feel, you know, what makes my shifters them, you know, and like, I don't know if people have done it or not. I don't really know. But with Feral Hearts, essentially they have two halves of their soul. They have a human aspect and a wolf aspect. And in a way, it's a very spiritual thing. And they're kind of two different people sort of duking it out in what they call a soul battle. So now in Alex's case, he is an alpha wolf, but he's also kind of a loser. He starts out very unsure of himself. He doesn't have a lot of confidence and he's not very strong. However, he is 10 times better than a lot of other alphas in his regard in that he's not an asshole. He's a very nice guy. He's a caring guy. He doesn't have that toxic masculinity thing that Rosary's books have, you know. But I was playing on that, obviously. But so in this one, you have a character who isn't very strong, but has an immense, powerful wolf aspect. And there's a fight between them because Alex hates his wolf aspect. He's mean, he's vicious. He wants absolutely nothing to do with him, and it's vice versa. So it's almost like a fight internal between them on who's going to win the soul battle and how is that going to shape the person Alex is going to become.
Okay.
And with Rosary's books, they're not even the werewolves in here. They're actually called Werdwin, and they're not supposed to be human. They were never human. They are their own race. In fact, they start out as pups. They're born as wargs. And if they don't put enough energy into what they're doing, they'll revert back to being dogs. So they come from a very different culture. And in their culture, it's kill or be killed. And it's a very hyper-violent culture. So I think the Offerings series got banned because there was a lot of, you know, non-consent and all of that. But it's also a very violent book. And I think now, like I said, I don't, there might be a lot of that in other shifter worlds. I don't know, but I know that when I was writing The Offering, I tried to really focus on the cultural differences. And Fern was my main character, but he was kind of a fish out of water. He was something where he was a character that the audience could relate more to because he had more values that our society has as opposed to his society.
Okay.
He never really fit, right?
Okay.
So I like the idea that, you know, these just weren't wolves that became, these just weren't people that became wolves, right? These were their own kind of creatures. And in the world of The Offering, there is a bunch of different races. There's zombies, there's vampires, there's, you know, so it's a whole different beast. But I kind of thought that was cool about, you know, and even in their world, there really isn't a divide between gender as far as like sex goes. So you can
hold that thought because we're going to come back to that.
Are we? Am I going too far? Okay, I just wanted to get both of my books in there, but that was it. Honestly,
hold that thought. We'll come back to it.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I think the one thing that is really different is that there are no real humans in my wolf shifters. A human is a wolf that has lost the ability to shift. So they might be outcast from a pack and they might be living away from a pack, but I really focus the dynamics of the story on inside the packs themselves. Also, all of the shifters have two mates. You might not always find both of your mates. And when you first find them, you'll see what's the beginning of a bond mark that forms. It looks like a tattoo And you'll just see the first couple lines of it. So it's up to that shifter to find that other shifter and work on, you know, building a relationship with them, or they won't have that bond. So it's not really fated mates where they're instantly attracted to one another. There's shifters in my books who reject their mates at first. And they really have to work to create that bond and build that trust between them. And the other thing that I really have going on in that series right now is that there are 2 motorcycle clubs within the Wolf Shifters. One of them has been part of a trafficking ring to traffic exotic shifters. And the other one is actually the protectors of one of the packs. And they have sort of stumbled upon each other and are clashing as one of the packs is realizing that there is this ring going on and these shifters are being taken away and they're trying to break it up. And as they do, they realize their pack isn't necessarily as good as they've thought it was. And they're trying to, like, you know, fix that. There's a lot of pack politics, a lot of council members versus council members, but there's also there's like a Meals on Wheels version going on where, like, they feed all their pack members. They have community gardens. Nothing is on the money system. Everything is barter. So their pack, the Comet Lake pack, really tries to take care of all of its members.
Okay. How about you, Maz?
So my Shifters in the Relic series, I wanted to do something. I knew I wanted them to be dinosaurs, but I had to make it make sense that they were dinosaurs, even though it's shifters and who cares, but I'm me. So the lore that I have for my dinosaur shifters is that they are beings that have been around since basically the beginning of time, and they've always been able to kind of just hop to whatever form they needed to survive. So kind of like a going with the evolutionary flow, but and fast forward. So like whatever life form was around, they could become that thing to like get away from danger or to eat or whatever, right? So the way it works in my series is that when the asteroid hit Earth and everything was going bananas, they shrunk down to the smallest form that they had available, burrowed underneath the ground and fell asleep, and went into like a deep hibernation and slept for 65 million years and woke up in various staggered points. And they woke up as the most dominant thing on the planet at the time, which was a person, as a human. So instead of being able to take whatever form they want now, they're restricted, and they don't really know why. It's probably something to do with the blast, that they can only now be their human form, and then the last dinosaur or prehistoric form, because I do have one shifter that's a Quetzalcoatlus, and he's not a dinosaur, but he's a big thing. But they like the last form that they like connected to before they went to sleep. So they've only got the 2 forms. And their whole goal now is to try to take fossils off of the black market and repatriate them back to their original home country or to museums to help Earth learn about what life was like back in their prime, or like when, you know, the Earth was young. So that's their whole thing. I wanted to give them some sort of making sense as to why they were there, and give them the goal of trying to like educate and make sure humans understand the history of their planet. So that's my whole thing.
Okay. Rachel?
I think in the world of LGBTQ plus shifter fiction, our books are not that different per se. I think it's more different in terms of the werewolf monster trope. In horror and in folklore, you know, the werewolf loses control and they eat people and they ravage the countryside. But our shifters maintain control, and particularly in the Asheville Arcana series, which is the one that's we've kind of, you know, been delving deeper into, they are not only in control, they're not tied to the moon, but they're not monsters. They are actually here to help guard against evil forces, demonic forces that occasionally try to invade and destroy humanity and everything else. And so they are different from the classic monster trope in that sense. But we do love a good fated mate.
All right, Kiki.
I think because I've written like so many shifters and a lot of wolves, probably the one thing that would make my shifters different is that I really hold to the belief that there's no one way of writing something. Like, you're not like, what do werewolves do? Because werewolves do whatever you want them to. Like, it is how I say it is. And that repeats with every single book. Okay, like, what happens now? Oh, these wolves have wings. Okay, sure. Like, it's not ever stuck in cement. I have wolf shifters that come from different dimensions, because of course they do. Like, I've just pretty much let them be whatever I want them to be, and I don't really pay much attention to like what they normally are or how they normally act in other books, basically.
I think we've all gotten that review from somebody who says, but vampires don't do that.
Definitely. Like, have you been a vampire, really?
Fiction. Yeah. Kiernan?
I use a lot of humor when I'm writing my shifters, usually. At least I try to. And I think that I also try and show that they're not all powerful. They have foibles, they have flaws. Sometimes they're kind of funny flaws, like fainting goat that falls over. Right now, I just today started writing the 15th book in the Midnight Rodeo series, and it is one of the characters is an iguana who thinks he's a chameleon. And everybody likes him so much that nobody wants to clue him in that he doesn't blend. So he thinks he's blending into a wall, and he's really not. So it's just using a lot of humor, I think, makes my guys stand out a little bit.
Yeah, I love playing with the idea of shifters who don't really fit in with their romp, scurry, pack, whatever you call their aggregate group. Fox Hollow is a town in the Adirondacks that is a haven for misfit shifters. And then there was a group of psychics who were no longer welcome in Lilydale, so they found their way there too. And now they're part of the community. And the main goal in Fox Hollow, the big rule is thou shalt not eat thy neighbor. So everybody gets along, whether you're predator or prey or livestock, nobody eats anybody. And I think what that makes mine maybe a little different just because of the setting. But my shifters, they're not werewolves, they're not tied to the moon, but they are always aware when they're in their human or their animal form of their other half. And they carry on this ongoing conversation with their other half, which is usually fairly snarky, especially the animal half, because they have opinions and they are always a little judgmental about how humans do things because it's so indirect. Why don't you like him? Why don't you just bite him and get it over with? We don't do it that way. Oh, humans are just, this is why everything takes so long. We can't do that. Did you try? How about just licking him? And so this goes back and forth, and it kind of gives both perspectives. But when the chips are down, both sides rally and protect each other and cheer each other on and support each other. And it's just a lot of fun writing it that way. So let's talk about the magic and the world building. What kind of world and magic do your shifters exist in? BL?
So our world sort of, the main pack, the Eastern pack lives in, we picked the area of like Washington just because it was very, there's a lot of rural areas, a lot of forest, in those, like near those areas. They live amongst humans, and humans know they're there, but they just kind of, let them do their own thing. They're not causing any problems or, invading in our lives. So they just sort of let them do their own things. We don't have in our series, we don't have a whole lot of human interaction. They do have friends and stuff. That, you know, the one guy, I can't even think of his name, Merrick, is in medical school, and he does have friends there, but once he leaves there to go to the pack to kind of help them with their the issues with the slow death is the name of the disease, then he is pretty much wrapped in that, so he doesn't have a whole lot of human friends. You know, we have ours, mostly they shift when they're with their mate. Once they find who they kind of know too who their mate is. It's not like, you know how some books where they're not sure, or they feel this pull, they're not sure where their mate is, but they know their mate's out there, kind of thing. We don't have a whole lot of that. We have more where they pretty much know when they're with their mate, they know it's their mate. But once they are together, that's sort of their magic, I guess. They don't want to be apart from their mate. So
Rosary.
All right, so I have written a few, so I think I'll jump in with Rosary's. For the most part, in all of my books, I don't write in reality, even if it's a contemporary scene. I don't like doing that. I feel it just sort of limits me, and then I have to sort of regulate it to what's actually there. The only time I did that was in my Kitsune Shifter book, because I wanted it to take place in Japan, and even there, I just use the city name, and I said, okay, it's nothing in this, you know, I just use the name here, but most of the time it's just my own world. Excuse me. So with the offering, I'm sorry, my throat says I need a drink. Okay, so with the offering, it is its own world. There's someone hint this might be like a future version of our society if things went terribly wrong or something, but humans don't rule the world anymore. They just don't. They're one of the races, and they're kind of a small sort of thing, and they're supposed to be descendants of the legendary Van Helsing. And even though the one human character who's a friend of Fern's, he's kind of a big coward, and that's kind of his thing. But for the most part, this world is like I kind of say it's populated by like Halloween characters. Because when I was writing it, I thought, because I even have a mummy character that's going to come in for one of the spinoffs, and I finally was able to make that sexy. For a while, it hung me up. I'm like, you know, I can't do the whole corpse thing here, so make something work, because it's not going to happen. But I finally was able to do it. But so that's coming in on a spin-off book. But mostly this is just its own world where each society kind of has their own rules, but they have to play nice together. Like in Wordrin society, it's really, murder isn't even off the table, you know, but they can't live in a society like that. So they have like fighting zones and non-fighting zones, kind of thing. And you have, you know, like the zombies and the humans actually don't get along, and they fight. It used to be the humans and the vampires didn't like each other, but then they got together and they were fine. And so it's a whole bunch of different races that somehow you think that there would be like, you know, constant fighting, but they make it work. And the story isn't even really about the politics there. It just sort of feeds into the rest of the story. More it's about, you know, Fern and this forced mating he's forced to go into. But it's pretty much like that. I like to take, you know, fantasy worlds entirely. I don't like to base them on any real city, because I feel like I have to do a shit ton of work on that. I just want my brain to just do what it does and not have to be boggled down on that one. But
all right, Layla.
Well, I have maps drawn out because there's bighorn sheep country, there's bear country, there's wolf country, there's, you know, down in the swamp, they've got alligator shifters. And so if you're crossing pack lines or you're crossing into someone's territory, there's, you know, there's things that you should do in order to not give offense to someone. And, you know, they have something called a gathering among the wolves, and they'll get together a couple times a year. And that's really the only time that's those from different packs will see each other. And so it's a really good time to like, hey, maybe you might meet your mate at this thing. Because if you're not a council person or a member of one of the MCs, or you're not doing shipping or something, you're not just going to be out traveling, because it does take a lot of work for them to just travel. So they build their society really on everything's funded by the council in Comet Lake. So if you are the baker, you send an invoice to the council, and the reason for that is so that when somebody comes in and wants to trade you a jar of preserves for, you know, a box of donuts, you can take that trade without having to think about it, because you know that you're going to be able to still get your supplies brought in. So it really is a lot of, I live in a small place in the Midwest. We've got farmers markets and all these things and swap meets. And I really wanted all of that to be in my world, where it was very much like, you know, everyone in your pack and you take care of each other. And if somebody's a tree lands on someone's house, you're going to have, you know, 15 shifters there to get the tree off and fix the house the very next morning.
Okay. What about you, Maz?
So when you mentioned like the magic in the world, it's interesting. Well, like my first thought was like, oh crap, I don't have any magic in my world. But when I really was thinking about it and kind of ruminating, the magic, I guess, in the Relic series is science, like the magic of like as hard as science as I can when you're dealing with fictional shifters. But like I really tried to weave in a lot of my passion for paleontology into this world, and like talk about the importance of fossils and how evolution works, and even the relic guys themselves being creatures that have always kind of been around. They have pieces of the planet's history within them, and they're little blips of memories that they can retain, at least in a fuzzy sense, because, you know, when you jump from amoeba to like a full dinosaur, you're not going to keep all of your memories forever. So as they're humans, like reflecting back on the past, they're like, I can kind of remember that Jurassic was just really humid, but I don't really understand much more than that, because it's hard to like extract that memory that far back. But that's like, this is the first series that I had written that was set in a real world, because my Stallion Ridge series is like a total fantasy world, Wild West, there's centaurs, it's not set in like Earth, but this is here, they're based out of Texas, you know what I mean? Like I wanted it to be grounded, I wanted it to have those callbacks to real science, because that's what was important to me, and that's like the whole thread of the series. So my guys are magical in the sense that they are very rooted into biology and history and Earth and things like that. So that's my magic.
Nice. Rachel?
Well, kind of like the title says, Asheville Arcana, that particular series is very steeped in magic. It is set in and around Asheville, North Carolina, which is the western part of the state where the mountains are. So there are lots of places where paranormal creatures can avoid human contact if they want to. But in our world, the human world and the paranormal world are parallel, but they don't overlap that much, even when, you know, say the shifters tend to live in Asheville itself. They tend to have their own neighborhoods, their own Alchemy Row is like their own market area, and they don't interact a whole lot with humans. But at the same time, they are very invested in that, because a lot of what the paranormal beings here, who are magic users of different types, vampires, shifters, it's elves, dryads, fae of all type, they are, as I mentioned earlier, the guardians. You know, there is an ongoing battle between light and dark in the series, and dark continually tries to encroach, and it's the paranormal beings' job to keep the dark at bay, while also keeping the humans ignorant that this, you know, massive battle is going on. So yes, lots of magic.
Cool. Kiki?
I write a lot of worlds. I just sort of fell into connecting all of my series because I have a really hard time saying goodbye to my characters. So my first kind of Wolves of world has I think maybe 5 or 6 different series with just different shifters, and that whole one is kind of about in the beginning humans don't know about shifters, and then of course the dragons ruin everything, and so it's about like humans becoming aware of shifters in this current world, or in their current world, not ours, unfortunately. My other one, Wolves of World, is sort of just like this insane creation story, spoiler I guess, just about how like the universe was created and how it's all gone wrong since then. My current world is the Lunar Wolves universe, and that's the one that's got like the wolves that are from different dimensions. I thought it was really funny that the more generic kind of werewolves that existed here on Earth, they thought that they were the only kinds of werewolves, and then these other two came through these portals and they can't go back. So that whole series is sort of about having these different cultures and sort of the political clashing that goes on when you're trying to meld a whole bunch of different belief systems together. But I think my favorite world is my Omega Assassins Club world. That one only has 1 series, but that one was just sort of more of like a political commentary on having rights over your own body, but with a whole bunch of killing. So that was nice.
Okay, Kiernan. You're muted.
I'm so
There you
sorry.
go.
I always forget that part. Like Kiki, I write a lot of different worlds. And all of my series are based in different universes. So for example, the Midnight Rodeo series, the characters all takes place in a rodeo that's run by supernatural creatures. In Their Own Skin series, humans are just beginning to become aware that shifters exist, and they're not happy about it. So shifters, one shifter in particular with his mate, found a ranch where shifters can come and be themselves and be safe. In the Dragon Island series, that's a fantasy series. So humans were aware of dragon shifters, but they hated the dragons, and the dragon slayers almost hunted them to extinction. So the dragons left and they settled on a chain of islands. So it depends, the world building depends on which series I'm working in at the time. And the one thing that kind of spans across the series is the fact that my shifters usually, almost always, can shift at will. I wanted them to have that agency over themselves. And in today's climate, I think, wow, I was thinking, look at me. But I just wanted them to be able to have that control over that very special feature that they have. But that's pretty much it. It just depends on what world I'm working in.
Well, folks, we have blown through our time, so we're going to have to do a lightning round here real quick, but I want everybody to have a chance to say where we can find you online. Keep it quick because I've got to do another panel at the top of the hour. So Kiki, let's start with you and go backwards.
You can find me everywhere. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, not Twitter so much, so don't look for me there. Facebook, I'm Kiki Burrelli everywhere. My Facebook group is Kiki's Den, so you can find me there. My books are on Amazon. I have a book coming out this Friday called Tension, so go and read that, please. Yeah, kikiburrelli.net is my website, or .com, both. They go to the same place by some sort of internet magic. So yeah.
Okay, Kiernan.
Kiernan Kelly, I'm on kiernankelly.com, which is actually under construction right now. I'm revamping my websites, but you can always find me on Facebook, definitely. My Facebook group is Kiernan's Little Monsters. Feel free to join. There's lots of fun going on. And I just had a shifter book come out. Well, I don't know when this is going to be viewed, but it came out August 5th. And I have another book coming out September 1st, which is Writing Lucifer.
Nice. Rachel.
Okay, so you can find my books and the Ari McKay books on www.arimckay.com. And we do have a Facebook group that is called Ari and Rachel's Crone Cavern. So you can join us there. And we will have another installment of the Asheville Arcana series out later this year.
Nice. Maz.
So if you look up Maz Maddox on any platform, you'll basically find me, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm everywhere, mostly on Facebook. Reader group is called Maddox's Saloon. And my latest release is the white cover, I can't point. Lost in Amber is the latest in the Relic series. So if you like dinosaurs in action, check it out.
Very good. Layla.
Well, I am on Facebook. I am on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. I have a website on Wix. I have a blog, Rainbow Lyrics and Mellow Mushrooms, and I post snippets of things. And I have a Facebook group that's Layla's Moonlight Magic. And my books are on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, pretty much everywhere you can kind of find a book or an ebook.
Nice. Rosary.
Okay, so you can find Rosary on basically pretty much all social media platforms except for TikTok. Maybe you'll get there, but not. But also, I have a Facebook group, Rosary's Devilish Delights, so you can check that one out. Then Melissa Costa also has one. Melissa's Readers Group. Yes, it doesn't have the greatest name, but you know what? Working on that. And again, I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And Melissa Costa writes. I have 2 Instagrams, technical difficulties, but I'm trying to get over to Melissa Costa writes. So, but yeah, you can also just linktree.Melissa Costa. You can see all of that, or linktree.Rosary Deville, and you can see everything for her. As far as sites go, I have melissacosta.com and rosarydeville.com. So check those out.
Okay. And BL.
Hi. All of my books are on Amazon. They're all in KU, so kind of easy to get. I am always on Facebook. I have a Facebook group. It's BL Maxwell MM. I have a website, blmaxwellwriter.com. These are the first 2 in the series. I don't know if you can see them. The third one comes out on the 28th. So we're excited for that. So check it out.
Very good. And I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbrice.com, all the social media sites, and I'm on pretty much all of them as some variation of those names. So if you spell them right, you'll find me. The books are on Amazon, and most of them are wide, except for my Shifter series, which is in KU, and that's the Fox Hollow series. But most of the time, you can find me here on Continual. So thank you so much to all of you for being such wonderful panelists. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There'll be more romance coming up here on Continual, so we'll see you online.